All right, buckle up, everyone, because today we are diving deep, no kidding, deep into the world of the Secret Service.
And let me tell you, it's a world with some seriously high stakes.
No doubt about it. And recent events have, well, they've shown some cracks in the armor, so to speak. We're talking about potential threats to former President Trump. Not once,
but twice.
You got two incidents we're going to unpack today.
And you got to remember, the Secret Service, they're under immense pressure every single day. I mean, they're protecting some of the most recognizable people on the planet, right?
Talk about a tough job.
And they got to do all that while trying to walk the tightrope, you know?
Yeah.
Got to keep these figures safe, but they also got to stay accessible to the public.
It's a balancing act for sure. No easy answers there. So we're going deep on two specific incidents, one in a Trump rally up in Butler, Pennsylvania, and another one not long after down in Florida. The sources you sent, Al Jazeera, AP, the BBC, and the Punch, they don't paint a pretty picture, that's for sure.
And what's really got my attention is how these events, they expose these vulnerabilities. And we're not just talking about one person, one event. We're talking about these issues, these systemic issues that could, well, they could impact the security of any high-profile figure out there.
Okay, so let's start with that rally in Butler, July 13th. Going through the articles, one thing that really struck me was just how many things went wrong. I mean, just one after the other. Like the Secret Service's own internal review, they pointed to major communication breakdowns, especially with the local police in Butler.
And it's like when you see that image, the one from the Al Jazeera article, that sea of people, the energy, the chaos, you start to get a feel for just how difficult it is to try to secure an environment like that. It's a logistical nightmare.
Seriously. Just looking at that picture makes my head spin.
Absolutely.
And it sounds like that feeling, that overwhelmed feeling, it was shared by some of the law enforcement on the ground that day. The articles mentioned that multiple agencies were raising concerns, red flags about where the Secret Service sniper team was positioned. But it seems like those concerns, they were kind of brushed aside.
Yeah, and this is a perfect example of how even little things, small miscommunications, they can snowball in high-pressure situations.
And the thing is, even their technology, their fancy gadgets, they failed that day. All of the sources agreed on this one. Their over-reliance on cell phones, they should have been on those dedicated radios. It created a huge communication mess.
Just a minute. It really makes you think, we're so reliant on technology these days, but it's not foolproof. You can't just put all your eggs in one basket. Redundancy, that's the key. Whether you're talking about these communication systems or, heck, even backup generators, you need a plan B.
Yeah, it's like trusting your life to a single rope bridge over a huge canyon. You want multiple supports. Right.
Exactly. And speaking of things failing, one of the most, unsettling things to come out of the Butler incident was this line of sight issue. Basically, the security perimeter, it wasn't as tight as it should have been, and that could have let someone with bad intentions get way too close to the former president. Think of it like a castle, right? Strong walls, imposing, but there's a hole in the wall. It doesn't matter how strong everything else is.
Chills, man, chills. And it gets even scarier when you consider what the Congressional Task Force, the ones investigating all of this, had to say. They called out complacency within the Secret Service, like it's a systemic problem,
Right, like they're just not taking these potential threats seriously enough anymore. Like when you've driven the same route so many times, you just stop noticing the landmarks, you know what I mean?
I see.
But the Secret Service, they can't afford to have that autopilot mentality. Because in their world, even a tiny lapse in focus, well, it can be a disaster.
But you get comfortable, right? Yeah. You let your guard down.
Yeah.
And that's when things can go sideways, especially in a high-pressure environment like that.
You said it. And, the thing is, this Butler incident, it wasn't just a one-off. The incident in Florida that happened just a bit later, well, it just underscores how important this whole security thing really is. It's like front and center now.
Yeah, let's talk about that Florida situation for a minute. What happened there? I mean, the sources weren't as detailed on this one.
Right, so from what we've gathered, it seems like they managed to drive right onto a golf course. Get this, while former President Trump was there.
No way.
Yeah, you'd think a golf course would be pretty secure, right? I mean, it's a private property, limited access, but this just goes to show you, no place is completely foolproof when it comes to security.
That's a good point. And what's interesting is how this second incident, it became this whole political thing. I think it was the Punch article they quoted.
Yeah.
Trump he's blaming Biden and Harris's rhetoric for these kind of things happening. Like, it's their fault. Can you believe that?
Yeah, and that same article goes on to mention how Biden's calling for more resources for the Secret Service. So you've got these two completely different takes on the whole thing. You've got one side saying, hey, This is what happens when you use inflammatory language. And then you've got the other side saying, we need to give these guys more support.
It's a mess.
Mm.
And it really makes you think about that whole debate, the whole free speech versus inciting violence thing. Like, where do you draw the line?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's not just about politics either. We see this playing out everywhere, online, on campuses, even in our own homes sometimes.
Right.
Words have power. Right. So how do you protect free speech while also making sure people aren't getting hurt? That's the tough part.
It's a tough one for sure. No easy answers there.
Yeah. Definitely not. But when it comes to the Secret Service, these incidents, they really highlight how important it is to be able to adapt. The world's changing fast. The threats are changing. You can't just rely on the old ways of doing things. And you definitely can't get complacent, because that's when people get hurt.
And it sounds like they're trying to make some changes, right?
Right.
At least try to hold people accountable. I mean, the Secret Service director, he resigned after that Butler thing, and they put a few agents on leave, so at least they're doing something.
It's a start. When you lose public trust, you got to show people that there are consequences. And that's what they're doing, at least trying to do.
But is it enough? I mean, will it actually change anything in the long run? That's what I want to know.
That's the question we should all be asking.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? Is it enough? Because at the end of the day, we're not just talking about a couple of isolated incidents here, right? This is about the safety of, well, really important people. And that affects all of us.
Absolutely. Think about it. The Secret Service, they're like the first line of defense. If someone wants to hurt our leaders, they got to go through them. So yeah, if they're vulnerable, it makes you wonder about the whole system, right?
Yeah, it's like, how did you put it before?
Like a crack in the foundation?
Right, like a crack in the foundation. Even a small crack. If you ignore it long enough, it can bring the whole place down.
And just like fixing a building, fixing this problem, it's complicated. It's not just about throwing money at it or making stricter rules. I mean, those things help, but it's going to be bigger than that.
So what? Like a change in, like, their whole attitude?
Yeah, something like that. They need to be more adaptable, The world changes fast, threats change fast, they got to be able to keep up.
So less stick to the plan and more think on your feet.
Exactly. And that means better training, better intelligence gathering, and creating an environment where agents, they feel like they can speak up. If something seems off, even if they don't know exactly why, they got to feel like they can say something.
Yeah, sometimes your gut feeling is telling you something's wrong before your brain can even catch up, right?
Right. And we can't forget about working together. Remember those communication problems between the Secret Service and the local cops in Butler? They got to be on the same page. Share information, work as a team.
Like a well-oiled machine.
Exactly. Or, how about this? Like a football team.
Okay, I like that one better.
Go on. So you can have the best quarterback in the world, right? But if the offensive line doesn't block, if the receivers run the wrong routes, he's going down. Everyone's got to do their part.
It's all connected. So bringing it back, what's the answer? What's it going to take to really fix this?
Honestly, it's going to take a lot. More money, probably. Definitely better technology. But more than anything, it's going to take a change in attitude. A real commitment to doing better. And that has to come from the top down.
Well, that was a lot to unpack today. We talked about some pretty serious security breaches, the politics behind it all, and what needs to change. We covered a lot of ground, but I think the big takeaway here is we got to stay vigilant, right?
Absolutely. We all have a role to play in keeping our leaders safe. Stay informed, be aware of your surroundings, and if you see something, say something.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This deep dive has been eye-opening, to say the least. Thanks for breaking it all down with me. And to everyone listening, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay safe out there.